This is Global Order. I'm Hindolz, and I invited Ambassador Prabhat Shukla to have a conversation with me because it's a very interesting juncture. When I first did my first interview on Global Order with Ambassador Shukla, he at length spoke about a subject which no one was talking about. And today, suddenly, everybody's talking about it, which is the conflict between Xi Jinping and the PLA, his own army. Now, for nearly a year and a half, most people thought that this was probably something that, was being, some people were talking about it, but it wasn't true. Nobody knew the truth. But consistently, Ambassador Shukla would talk about this. And today, it's making headlines everywhere as people talk about a massive purge going on within the PLA. And therefore, I cannot think of anyone better to explain this than Ambassador Shukla, because long before anyone, I dare say, in most parts of the world, not just in India, who was observing this and talking about this and writing about it, uh, Professor Shukla was absolutely one of those few people who were talking about it. And therefore, he's absolutely the best person to explain this. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you, Hindol. I'm happy that you remember. And of course, your effusive words of praise are music to my ears. But I think one must be modest. Yes, I got this right. As I told you then, I got a couple of other big ones right earlier. And so I'm feeling vindicated, if you like. And of course, very curious, like you, to delve further into what exactly has been happening and what it might mean for us in the first place. So happy to be with you, as always.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me then delve straight into the subject. I want to begin by asking you, there has been a long list of purges that are now emerging. Information is coming out about Xi Jinping removing generals, top generals within the PLA, some extremely powerful generals, including one very mysterious suicide case. Why don't we begin there? Talk to me about what you think is going on.
Okay. This suicide case is still at the stage of rumor. As I mentioned to you when we first talked about this, which was, I think, three years ago,
Sorry.
roughly 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and I'd been writing about it much earlier. See, what I have done all along is to stick to official Chinese sources and reporting. These rumors are important and frequently right and borne out by subsequent information. But my attitude has been, until we get that confirmation, sorry, ideally from an official Chinese source, we put it in a little box called rumors, but we still have a lot to work with. So let us begin. I think the first thing that I would say is the removal of Admiral Miao Hua. I don't know if I have mentioned this to you before, but it's worth repeating anyway. I say, and a lot of others say, there's a confrontation between Xi Jinping and the PLA. But I think we need to disaggregate the nature of this friction, because it's not all of PLA. The Navy and the Air Force are largely either neutral or with Xi Jinping. It's what the Chinese call the PLA Army, People's Liberation Army, or what people like me call ground force. They are the real stronghold of opposition to Xi Jinping. And even there, it's not a monolith. By the way, neither is Xi Jinping's non-military support. Even that's not a monolith. So I think the first thing is that it is, while you can talk about these broad categories in opposition, but there are wheels within wheels, if you like. So the first recent confirmation that we have is the case of Admiral Miao Hua. Now, and the funny thing is that all these people that we'll be talking about have an India connection, which is why I have been arguing that actually one of the major points of friction at the policy level is about India. So, Miao Hua, he's called Admiral, but he's not really a Navy man. He's a ground force man. And before the restructuring of 2015-2016, the border of India was covered by two different so-called military regions. There was a Lanchao military region, and there was the Chengdu military region. Miao Hua was a lieutenant general who was the political commissar at the Lanchao military region. Now, what happened was that when Xi Jinping came to India first time, September 2014, there was an incursion, as the PLA usually does, into Chumar. And Xi Jinping did not know about it. So, of course, he was quite embarrassed. And it took him, if I remember correctly, 3 days to get the ground force people to withdraw. When he got back to Beijing, he started removing these people who were then in the Lanchao military region out of that region. And one of the first ones to be removed was Miao Hua, which is why today when people say Miao Hua was very close to Xi Jinping, I don't buy that. That's not true. But Miao Hua and his commanding officers, all the way up to the Central Military Commission, obviously wanted to support him and give him a cushion his landing wherever he was to go. So he was in China, they can do these kind of things. So he was shifted to the Navy. And there again, he got a post in the southern, I think it was the southern military region, where he was absorbed for a while. Then they did the whole restructuring, which was done again by a man who has recently passed away. He was an Air Force man. And their Air Force has the same ranks as the ground force. So he was called General Shu Qiliang, not to be confused by with another guy called Shu Qiling. They're two different chaps. Shu Qiliang is an Air Force guy who was working very closely with Xi Jinping to restructure. And in the restructuring, he cut the ground force down to size. So they became one arm among the various other arms with their own headquarters instead of a common headquarters for all the armed services. And their numbers were also reduced. But of course, the fight went on. And even after the restructuring and we got the Western Theater Command, Miao Hua was then moved. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail. It gets a little confusing, I think. But let's just say that in order to solve the Doklam crisis of 2017, Xi Jinping had to sack 2 guys from the Central Military Commission, including the chief political commissar. So he sacked the guy, and strangely enough, this was the first sign of the greater power of the military. Miao Hua took his position. So Miao Hua remained the political commissar of the PLA from 2017 until last year. Because once you're in the Central Military Commission, there's no retirement age. So he was there, and sometime around late last year, the first reports came out that he had been suspended. This was the Chinese source, that he was suspended pending investigation into whatever charges, the usual thing, discipline inspection. It was only about, I think about probably a month ago, maybe less than a month, but about that much, that, what happens is there is this newspaper from the PLA. It's called China Mill. On the it's a web paper. I used to follow that every day because they used to list the members of the Central Military Commission, and all this while Mia Hua's name was there, even though he was said to be under suspension and whatever else. About 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I'm not quite clear, the name disappeared. So then I knew that now it was official and the man is out. And I chalked that down to a win for Xi Jinping, because I'm linking it back to his activities in the Lanzhou military region. So that I chalked down as a win for Xi Jinping. Now, the other case which you were mentioning, again has an India connection.
Before we go to the other case, sir, just so that a lot of people who don't follow this in granular detail and don't always understand the nuances, I just want to clarify and have you clarify one thing. Essentially, in broad terms, would it be correct to say that Xi Jinping might be interested in deeper cooperation with India, and the purges, at least some of them that are happening, are of people who hold a different opinion, indeed a hardline opinion against India? In lay terms, would this be correct?
In all terms, this is the truth. As I've said and written, India is the bone of contention between them. You see, all of them are agreed on Taiwan. They don't have any quarrel on that. The differences over timing and means and so on. But on India, there is a very clear division, a very clear confrontation. See, two simple facts. One, after he became president, Xi Jinping took over the India file. He was the first party leader and president who handled the India relationship in person. Prior to that, it was the prime minister who used to handle the India file. And therefore, the first thing he did within 2 years of, in fact, less, he became president in March 2013, and in September 2014, he paid his first visit to India. And you remember those images of the two of them on the banks of the Sabarmati and all that. So there was a great deal of warmth. And when he, after this Chumar incident and all, when he went back, he had a meeting with the senior echelons of the PLA. And he, in his lecture, he told them that you need to understand the international situation as it is evolving and make your decisions accordingly. What he was hinting at was that we have enough problems with the Americans in the India Pacific or Indo-Pacific region. Don't open a second front on the India border. That was his clear message. So indeed, India is the core issue dividing the two right now. And to agree and to emphasize what you have just said, Mia Hua was one of those people at the senior levels and finally at the CMC who was standing in the way. Now, shall we go to the second case now?
Absolutely, please.
All right. The second case is a man called He Weidong. He Weidong also has an India connection. He was until 2019, until December 2019, after the Western Theatre Command had been set up, he was the man in charge of the ground force in the Western Theatre Command. And the overall commander of the Western Theatre Command was a chap called Zhao Zongqi. I don't want to burden this with too many names, but this name is worth remembering because he is the man who really caused the fighting that happened in Galwan. See, you remember there were those two informal summits between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi, right? And the second one happened in Mamalipuram in Chennai.
Right.
That happened in October 2019. And you know, before that happened, we had done two things which you would normally expect a Chinese leader to say, look, we can't go forward with India on this basis. One, we had changed the status of Jammu and Kashmir. And in parliament, at least, there were even statements that Ladakh and the entire Aksai Chin area were part of India. The second was, which happened a little earlier, was the attack on Balakot in Pakistan. So, you know, China's iron brother had been attacked by us. And the foreign minister, Wang Yi, who is now again foreign minister, he had moved up and he's still up, but he's holding a dual charge. He had actually agitated this issue even in the UN Security Council. But the Americans, the French, and the Russians blocked any discussion of this. And then he was due to come to India in September 2019. We cancelled that visit because of Wang's activities in the UN. So despite all this, Xi Jinping came to India. And on the eve of his departure for India, the Pakistan then Prime Minister Imran Khan and the army chief, I think it was General Bajwa, both of them went hot foot to Beijing to probably dissuade him or to tell him not to make any compromises or whatever. We don't know the facts, but all of this was ignored. It's a very, very important signal here. And then he came and had a very successful visit, and they began to hint at new thinking on both sides. This was a very, very remarkable turnaround. And of course, there was the promise of a third informal summit in 2020, which would also coincide with the celebrations of the 70th anniversary of our diplomatic relations. So things were going along very nicely. And He Weidong was the man in charge of the army, the ground force. He was removed, and this other name that I mentioned to you, Xu Jiling, he was brought in April, late April. And you see, by June, we had the Galwan fighting with 20 killed on our side and probably 45 on their side. Now, here I'm doing a bit of surmising, if you like, or intelligent guesswork. See, the thing is that when the Western Theatre Command was set up, there were two military regions, or military commands, the Chinese call them. One was Tibet, one was Xinjiang, which are, of course, as you can understand, very sensitive for Beijing. So these two military commands were placed under the direct command of the army, of the ground force, in the Central Military Commission in Beijing, not under the command of the Western Theatre Command. And my surmise is that would have resisted the demand for some kind of military action against India of the kind that we saw in Galwan, and that he therefore was eased out. Xu Jiling comes in his place and launches what happened. And the end result of that was that this whole initiative of the informal summits was blown to bits. That was the end of that dialogue and anything else that the president was able to do. And now you see he really has no role in the India relationship. There was talk about the BRICS summit. He has announced, well, China has announced that he will not be going. And remember, when we were hosting the G20, he did not come. Li Qiang came in his place. So obviously there is some effort at keeping the two apart, because I think I'm judging from the visuals that we saw at their meeting in Kazan. Even there you could see that there's a great deal of warmth and personal friendship between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. So I think what you are saying and what we are now seeing about He Weidong also fits in very nicely with this narrative of one set of people doing their best to torpedo any improvement in India-China ties, and a weaker section which is trying its best to ensure that the relationship does not go off the rails. Now what we are hearing, what we are hearing now is that He Weidong is also out. Now, if this is true, it is a mortal blow for Xi Jinping. The thing is, as I said, the PLA Daily used to list the members of the Central Military Commission, and then they dropped the name of Miahua. So I was looking to see whether He Weidong would also be removed. But now they have stopped giving the names altogether. This is a typical Chinese behavior. Moment you latch on to some bit of information, they suppress that. So they have stopped giving the names. But the fact that they have stopped suggests to me that, yes, He Weidong is also out. And this is, you get some sort of validation of this view, because, I mentioned the earlier guy, the Air Force guy, Shu Qiliang. Shu Qiliang died recently, and some are saying it is under suspicious circumstances. We don't know about that. Certainly he died. For his funeral, He Weidong did not turn up, did not even send a wreath. Now that is very unusual, because he is a very senior man in the Central Military Commission, and he is his direct successor. So by tradition, you would either go in person, or if you were, for whatever reason, illness or whatever, you are unable to go in person, you would surely send a wreath, but nothing of the sort. So there is something is amiss, and then you have to tie it in with the other things that are happening around Xi Jinping.
The scales, therefore, are tipping towards Xi Jinping. He's getting more powerful, or do you think this too early to say even now?
No, he's losing power. And I think he made a very major tactical mistake at the party congress in 2022, when he evicted his predecessor.
That's right.
In our culture, you respect your elders. You don't insult them publicly. And this was a very big mistake. So I would say that both now today within the military and within the party and bureaucratic establishments, there is a certain degree of opposition to Xi Jinping, largely policy-based, but it is beginning to turn into a personal issue as well, and it is weakening Xi Jinping.
But that's bad news for India, because we began by saying that he would like some sort of a rapprochement with India.
Yes, it is bad news for India, But as always, when there is a shake-up in the political kaleidoscope, you have to see what comes in its place. And that we don't have any answers for as of now, because it's a kind of coalition that has begun to work against him, including some of the party elders. So that is what we have to
May
watch
I
out for.
ask you, whoever replaces, let's take a hypothetical situation, sir, whoever replaces Xi Jinping would obviously be watching this very closely and would be watching these factions very closely too. And they would no doubt calculate in their minds, if these factions could do this to Xi Jinping, who's supposed to be one of the most powerful Chinese leaders ever since Mao, what should I do to counter them if I were to ever come to power?
Absolutely right. And yet we have to reckon with two or three facts. One is that the India of today is not even the India of 2014. We've come a long way and we are heading rapidly forward and upwards. So I think, the Chinese leadership is fairly pragmatic about these kind of things. And so, sure, if the PLA is the one that is going to emerge on top, we could have a problem. And there are rumors of changes in the PLA in the Western Theatre Command. There were 4 rapid changes after Xi Jinping started chucking them all out. Finally, he settled on one person. I'm not giving you his name not to confuse things. But there are reports that he has also been shifted out. Now, he had stabilized the situation very adequately. And if he has indeed been removed, then I don't think that is a very good development. But I would still watch to see who comes in his place. And really, honestly speaking, at the moment, all that we can do is just follow this extremely closely. The guy who's said to have been removed, we don't know. As I said, I always wait till we get official confirmation from a Chinese source. We don't have that yet. But yes, he has been in place now for 4 years. So normally in 4 years, you are moved, and he's not reached the retirement age yet. So it's possible that he will stay on. It's possible he'll get another post. And of course, it's possible that he'll just be removed and sent home, because there are no real hard and fast rules in the way they run their country. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But as of today, I would still say that man is still there, despite all the rumors and everything. So that's what's happening. But as far as
the point about them being pragmatic. Number one, how long do you see this conflict, internal conflict, continue? Could it be a long, protracted process? That's number one. And number two, how should India see this?
Right, now we are getting to the heart of the matter. I've also been asking myself, what happens? Suppose my reading is right, and Xi Jinping is under pressure, and the army is leading the charge, but now a number of the party elders have also got into the act. And in their society, as we discussed, their elders count for a lot. So, there are history doesn't provide a lot of parallels, but we do have one very important parallel, and that is Mao himself. Edgar Snow was a guy who zeroed in on Mao Zedong in 1935. And they had been friends since then, when he wrote his book, Red Star over China. And he was very close to Mao. And in fact, in 1970, at the October celebrations, Mao invited Edgar Snow to stand alongside with him on top of the. So that's how close they were. And Edgar Snow writes that by 1964, Mao Zedong had lost all power. He lost two important positions in 1954 to Zhou Enlai, and he lost the presidency of the country in 1959, I think, after the Great Leap Forward and the failure, to Liu Shaoqi. So he had lost quite a lot of his standing, and that is why he came back and launched the Cultural Revolution, where his followers physically destroyed the opposition. Liu Shaoqi was actually physically destroyed. So obviously now Xi Jinping cannot repeat that. For one thing, Mao had a certain standing among the people at large. Xi Jinping does not have that. And secondly, at that time, China was a poor, isolated country. They could live with the chaos. In fact, Mao wrote to his wife, we should welcome the chaos. But Xi Jinping cannot afford to say we should welcome the chaos. So for both these reasons, I imagine that there could be a redistribution of offices. But we have something very interesting that has happened in the meantime. They have a system of monthly Politburo meetings, the full Politburo, which is 24 members right now. In May, there was no Politburo meeting, and that itself should tell us something, meaning that there was something not quite agreed upon, because when they do hold a meeting, the idea is to come up with some kind of agreed document, or at least a press statement saying that this was discussed, etc., etc. Finally, they had a meeting on the 30th of June, almost missing the June meeting as well. And somewhere in between, there was a session with the party elders involved. Nobody is quite sure who convened the meeting, how it happened, how many people were there, but certainly some of the people in power today and some of the party elders were both there. And the June meeting of the Politburo lends some confirmation to this, because it talks about the creation of a new body for decision-making and coordination. And it says very clearly, one of the remarkable terms that it uses is really something quite surprising. It struck me. Yeah, it says that one of the tasks of this new body will be to strike a balance between leadership and overreach. Overreach.
Interesting.
I'm
Very,
pretty
very
sure that, yeah, and I'm pretty sure that every Chinese who reads it will know who was doing the overreaching and so who needs to do the balancing. So it's a remarkable document. Unfortunately, the English translation has left out all this. This has come in the Chinese version, so it is for their own people to know what is going on. So I think they seem to have found a slightly different solution this time, at least on a temporary basis, which is that there will be a coordination body over and above the current structures to make sure that you have proper policy making and implementation and so on.
Their National
Now,
Advisory Council, basically.
something like that. Exactly. Exactly. Something like that. So that may be one solution which will take him up to the 21st Congress, which is due in late 2027, which is just about 2 years away. And preparations will start next year, selecting delegates and all that. So I think that is one possibility. But there are reports from some other Western observers saying that there is going to be a split in the offices that he holds. There's a fourth plenum that's due. All these plenums have been delayed under Xi Jinping. The third plenum was delayed by a good 7 or 8 months. And the fourth plenum also might be delayed. There's talk that it will happen in August. And that is when whatever has been decided, they have that summer retreat in this place called Beida Hill. So after that, they work out whatever settlements and arrangements and compromises and all that. So by then, we should know what exactly is going to happen going forward. But I should add, in case I've given the wrong impression here, that Xi Jinping is not going down without a fight. He is fighting back. And at the moment, I think he is not doing well as far as the PLA is concerned. But as far as the 7-member Politburo Standing Committee is concerned, I think he has a working majority there. So it's not like he's under any kind of threat, but his policy making is going to face even more challenges than hitherto.
There was an assumption that, in a sense, he will be the leader of China for life. Now, all of this seems to put that under deep question mark. That's number one. And number two, the last part, how should India see all of this? Because, and I understand, I mean, this is a very interesting juncture because for all the things that are happening in the Indo-Pacific, Ambassador, for all that we have tried to do with America, we are also in a very interesting juncture. I think perhaps the first time our growth, and please correct me if you see this differently, our growth has also put us in a position where we also need to take a decision whether our future, in a sense, at least as far as really proceeding forward in terms of growth and strategy is concerned, lies in the Western direction, or does it really, if the future is Asian, does it lie with a reconciled China? Now, most people don't even talk about this because, talking about this is almost taboo, but this question is unmistakably emerging, like a ship out of the mist, so to speak, in front of us, Ambassador.
Yeah, it's a very good insight. Very good insight. How do I answer that? See, I think as far as the growth angle is concerned, we a lot of people say that we are now oriented towards the Indo-Pacific because we have a larger trade with that area than with the West. But that's not true. The truth is that our trade in the Western direction is still 2/3, and in the Eastern direction, it's about 1/3 of our total turnover. And the second important point is that in most of our trade in the East, we are running deficits. on the West, we are running some important surpluses, not with the oil exporters, but sure, but apart from that, most of that trade is in surplus. So, and this was, if you like, a mistake in our economic strategy all this while of doing FTAs with countries and regions where we were running a trade deficit. That's not where you want to do FTAs. You want to do FTAs where you're running a surplus, which we are now beginning to address.
I remember
So
how
I think
everybody said India was making a big mistake by not signing up for RCEP. But look where most countries of Southeast Asia today are who signed up
absolutely,
for RCEP.
absolutely, absolutely. So we did very sensibly in staying out of RCEP, and I think at some stage we'll need to see about what to do with individual countries. I think, for instance, Japan, for example, and South Korea and Taiwan. I think these are three countries where we really need to be doing a lot more. Yes, I said country. Now, what should India be doing? The, you know, it's not something I particularly enjoy saying, but we have neglected our defense. And it is something that needs to be rectified, especially given the overt hostility that we are getting now from countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, and of course, standing behind them is the People's Republic. And if indeed, as we are witnessing, the balance is tilting towards the PLA, the ground force, which are really the ones that are facing us across the border, we really, really need to do a lot more. And really on a war footing. I mean, quite literally on a war footing. That way, we can face up to whatever changes we see coming in the People's Republic. Because I do believe that if in the early stages, after some kind of formal restructuring, they will have to rethink their approach to India and how much can Xi Jinping at that stage influence the decision. We don't know. But, all is not lost. Remember, when the leadership change took place in 2012, Xi Jinping became president and Li Keqiang became prime minister. And he also came to India and he made great play on the fact that his first foreign visit was to India. So I think there are elements, even apart from Xi Jinping, who would be happy to come to some kind of accommodation with India. Because, just as you said, it's possible that if you can, given the kind of uncertainties which we are facing across the world, including the United States, it would be very reassuring if we could at least come to some kind of via media with the People's Republic. So, and I'm sure that they would have the same feeling too, because they are feeling the heat from the United States and from the European Union. So there is a certain logic to it, but not while the PLA is calling the shots on the India relationship. And we have to be prepared to actually blunt that policy. And there's only one way to do it, which is to build up our military.
I have two last questions for you, Ambassador. One is in this, and I think you and I have discussed this in the past, but it bears repeating. In all of this shenanigans between Xi Jinping and the PLA, there are almost echoes of what happens in Pakistan. Here are, civilian leaders, so to speak, a very powerful army on the other hand, and it's almost like the same echoes of the same kind of tussle is playing out also in China? That's number one. That's my first question. The other question is, one of the reasons why I asked you that question about our future being westwards and eastwards. If you look at the West, Ambassador, of course, I mean, there are great ties. We do great business. But as India, if India genuinely rises as a civilizational force, many people feel that in terms of being able to understand the India of the future, an Asiatic power will perhaps understand its instincts better than a deeply fractured West, including many places in the West fractured by the rise of a particularly virulent strain of Islamism that moves out of West Asia and percolates and is already percolating deep into the inner workings of European nations, certainly the UK and parts of America.
Sure, sure. Profound questions. Look, as far as the Pakistan analogy is concerned, it's true, but there is a little twist there. The twist is that in the case of the People's Republic, you have a body, an influential body of opinion, of executive authority, who see the benefits of an accommodation with India. In Pakistan, frankly, I don't see that. It used to be said at one time that Nawaz Sharif was the man you could do business with. But in my experience, no, it makes no difference. I believe, in fact, that Pakistan is actually a lost cause. There is no constituency there for an accommodation with India, leave alone good ties with India. So I think there is that important difference. As far as the task of explaining and accommodating by our interlocutors is concerned, yes, I think I think that is a very deep observation of yours. But think about it. When the China opening happened in the late 60s and early 70s, China was also a closed book to most of them. They made the effort, they understood, and the Chinese did their little bit to explain themselves. I think a similar exercise needs to be done by us, especially by people like you who understand the civilizational roots so well. I think if you have the clout, the message will get through. I remember when I was in Singapore, we organized an India week, and the Prime Minister then, Goh Chok Tong, was quite bullish on India. Well, one of the best things about my time there, that I could always bank on his support. And so for the inaugural, we invited him and he came. And I had told him that, we'll be doing not just the traditional kind of things that we do, but we'll show you more about modern India and about the kind of things that we do with the same kind of musical instruments that you use, only we do it differently. And I added a little cheekily, we do it better. And he smiled, came along. And as he was leaving after the show, we did a fashion show. We had L. Subramaniam on violin. And he was mesmerizing. And as he was leaving the show, he said, what you have shown me is an eye-opener. It is as good as anything I've seen anywhere in the world. But the reality of the world is that they respect power. And with that, he gave a smile and we bade each other goodbye, and that was that. But, that is the heart of it. If it is worth their while to understand us, they will understand us. I mean, why do you think, for example, in the Gulf region, the Gulf Arabs, they are understanding us perfectly well? As I mentioned to you earlier, I mean, Pakistan said if you invite Sushma Swaraj, we won't attend. And the Emiratis said, fine, you stay away, but Sushma Swaraj will come. Now, that itself tells you about the changing power balances. And I think it will expand outwards as we continue on our paths. And I think the important thing is that, I can't say this often enough, they all respect military power. And I mean, it's not that they are alone, the whole world does. I mean, Germany is the third largest economy in the world. In any security event, does anyone think of Germany? No. Does anyone think of Japan? No. So, an element of military power is quite important. And I hope that that is something which, we're doing pretty well, huh? Don't get me wrong, but we need to do a lot more.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to jot this line from you as a guiding principle. If you have clout, the message gets through. I attend many, many, many events these days where people are constantly lamenting about India's narrative challenges and so on and so forth. And I think you have so deftly put it and so absolutely wonderfully put it. All narrative challenges go away once you have the clout to make it go away. Suddenly
Absolutely.
everybody understands the message and the narrative perfectly if you have the clout to
Exactly.
drive it home.
Exactly.
I am
Exactly.
absolutely on board with you on this, ambassador. And people like
Great.
you teach people like me how to get this message across, and for which we are very grateful.
No, I should tell you, it's something that's been on my mind also. This whole thing about our having not got our message across, a narrative war, this and that. You know, it's a curiosity about us, which I neither like nor accept. Look at your TV channels, okay? All the foreign channels that you get CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, France 24, all of them abusing India left and right. The channels that are helpful to us, Sky News, Fox, you don't get them here. So you are loading the dice against yourself, and then you say, oh, we're not winning the narrative war. Obviously, you won't. And of course, then true too that we need to have more of an outreach, and people like you are doing a great job on that. And I'm sure it'll continue.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks very much. On that note, I'm happy to tell you we just crossed, only 2 days ago, we crossed 1.6 million views. This
Oh,
for
congratulations!
a platform which doesn't dumb down anything, which doesn't do any of the shock and awe stuff, is
Right, right.
something we take to heart. And it's all happened because of the support of people like you and that you've given over the years to us by explaining so many things to us and our audience, and for which we are very, very
No,
grateful,
no.
sir.
My congratulations to you, and looking forward to 2 million as the next milestone. I'm sure you'll conquer that also very soon.
We
Because I
we
agree with you. People are tired of this whole business of packaging and selling. They want the truth,
I agree.
and that's what you are giving, and that's why it's doing so well. So keep on at it. Keep up the good work. God bless you.
Thank you. And of course, just before I go, I must say that we are very privileged in Global Order also to have Ambassador Shukla as part of our advisory board. I only had to ask him once, and I'm very grateful that he accepted. Thanks very much, Ambassador.
Thank you for inviting me to join. Happily do so. And I'll be sending you another essay before long. I'm working on
We
something
look forward.
entirely new, something which I have not tackled so far in writing. So it'll be something new.
That's wonderful. We look forward to receiving it, and we'll be very grateful and very delighted to publish it. And we'll have another conversation very soon with you. Thanks very much for your time today,
All
once
right.
again, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you, Hindol. Always a pleasure.